Good evening, everyone, or good morning, I guess, depending on whenever you happen to be watching this video. This is pretty cool that so many of us from all over the world get to connect over photography. I love doing these videos where I basically look at photos that you have sent in and give you a little feedback. My goal is to look at what is strong about your photo and then give you some suggestions as to what would make this photo even stronger. Maybe you're not going to go out and take the exact same photo, but you can always, go out and when you're in a certain similar circumstance, you can, try the things that I suggest. So this is a photo that was sent in from Christopher, who took my series of classes 3 or 4 years ago, basically not too long before the pandemic hit and shut everything down for a while. And this is a RAW file. It's the same photo, exact same photo, and it's a RAW file and it's a JPEG file. And I'm not going to cover this in this video, but at the end you'll find a link to the video where I cover why should you shoot RAW, why should you shoot JPEG, why and when and what's the difference kind of thing. So, but I just wanted to give you a little prelude to that and at least show you kind of a before, well, not a before and after, but a comparison photo between RAW and JPEG. All right, let's get into the photos that you sent in. So starting with Darlene, she described herself as a hobbyist who loves capturing life's moments. And so these are two photos that she sent in of life's moments. And these are great. Let's start with this one here. So we're in a barn and we see what I assume is a mother and then the, somewhat newborn or somewhat new horse. One thing that strikes me about this photo, probably the thing that struck me first, was kind of the intimacy of the photo. Now, the mother is in the foreground, and we've got baby in the background, but they're not so far from each other, that we have mother in the foreground and then baby is way back there or something. So, and when you look at their faces, they're actually very close to each other, and the mother's mouth is actually, kind of overlapping with the baby's head. And I love that in this photo, even though there is some, foreground, background separation between them, it's still, the positioning of the faces in the photo, I think makes the emotional connection or bond, kind of jump out at you. So we've got this, they're basically just beginning to touch or intersect there. And I think that brings out the emotion in this photo. And then, of course, we have the backlight. So it appears as though there is a window right up here, and it's shining light in, and you can see the light making the fur glow around here, and basically, just tracing. I normally refer to this as edge light, when the edge of an object or a person is being lit up. So it could be somebody's shoulders and the top of their head. And that's basically the kind of thing we see going on here, is basically just the edge of this little one is being lit up. And it creates, because the light is coming from behind and then, basically shining over top, we've got backlight and it's causing the fur to kind of glow. And I think that intensifies the moment. So basically between, the basic gesture that we have between these two and then the light that's making the little one glow, and of course also bringing out, a lot of the texture in the hay and the ground, I think, those two things, the gesture and the light, really make this a strong photo. What would have made it stronger? Perhaps just more moments. I don't know what precisely would have made this even stronger. I mean, this horse here is slightly out of focus, but not dramatically out of focus. I suppose if it was a little more crisp or just a little more in focus, that might have made it stronger. But perhaps, sometimes there may not be something obvious that would make this photo stronger, except adding more photos to it, adding two or three more photos that are a little bit different, that give you kind of a series. I think that would be kind of neat. And especially if you're considering, I really, really, really encourage you to print your photos. I take a lot of photos, like hundreds of photos a month, thousands of photos a month. It depends what you're counting, because I'm a professional photographer who photographs families. So, I mean, in some months I can take like 20,000 photos, and I'm not going to print them all. But, if I can just come up with a photo every 3 months that I want to print, and there is something about having your photos hanging in your living room or somewhere where you're going to see them that changes the way you look at things. When you're face to face with a photo day after day after day, it kind of grows on you. And so it'd be really neat to see like a series of 3 photos, maybe printed on canvases, largish ones, at least 12 by 12, and then hanging in your living room or something like that. And just 3, slightly different photos, three different moments between these two, I think is what would make this photo better. Actually, same kind of advice for this one, because I really like this photo. I mean, we can see what I think is interesting is it's hard to say what I was drawn to first in the moment or in this photo, and I think it might have been the boy's face. And then, of course, you see that he's looking down at something, and you follow his eyes, and you see he's looking at this crab in his hand. But then inevitably, eventually, we're drawn back to the face, just because I think we're drawn to human faces. And then you look at his face, and because he's looking down, you're drawn back to the crab. And I found myself going back and forth a few times looking at this photo, from the crab to the, kind of curiosity on his face, back to the crab. And again, probably what would make this photo stronger, because I think it's a pretty good photo to begin with. I think it's great that the background is out of focus, and yet you can still tell what it is. I can still tell that this is rocks. And I mean, I'm even going to take a guess that this is maybe, this is just a guess. I don't know what would make me even bother guessing, except I just want to say it's on the East Coast, kind of northern United States or Canada, something like that. Let me know if I'm anywhere near the right place. That's the guess I'm taking. And I'm guessing because of the rocks, because I've been there, and there's something familiar about this to me. Maybe I'm way off, but they're out of focus, so I'm really drawn to the boy and the crab, but they're in focus enough that I can tell what they are. So again, maybe a photo that was of him picking up the crab out of the dirt, and then possibly a photo, like a close-up of the crab in his hand, and then this photo here, and again, like a series of 3 printed would be really cool. Potentially a square photo. So maybe that one is 12 by 12, and then maybe this is 6 by 6 and 6 by 6. I mean, you can print them any way you want, but I just think that's one of the things sometimes that makes our photos stronger, is having, let's say, 3 photos that show different aspects of this moment, or different aspects of, the interaction between mother and child, or, boy and crab. So, nice job. I would definitely encourage you, and who knows, you sent me 2 photos. Maybe you had lots more that you took in the moment. But I would say with every moment that you capture, try and explore that moment from as many different little micro moments within the moment, and different angles and that kind of thing. Okay, this is Linda. So those last photos were Darlene, and then this is Linda. And Linda has a new Canon Rebel 8, I forget what, TI8 or something like that. And it kind of feels like she's starting from scratch. So here is just some quick advice. I've used a variety of cameras. I started with an Olympus, which I didn't know how to use. Then I went to Nikon, which I eventually learned how to use. Then I went to Fuji, which I knew how to use instantly. I also have a little Olympus point and shoot, which gives me some control over the camera settings like ISO and aperture in particular. But even when I pick up somebody's Canon, I mean, I basically know how to use it because I learned about the camera settings that apply to any camera, no matter what camera you pick up, as long as you have some control over the settings. And it's basically ISO. I learned about ISO, and it's basically ISO, in a nutshell, is like how sensitive is your camera to the light. Are you in bright light and you need to tell your camera, okay, you're in bright light, you need to set yourself a bright light? Or are you in dim light and you need to help your camera see in the dark? ISO is going to help you do that. I also learned about aperture, and one of the creative things about aperture is getting your, let's say, your foreground or your background out of focus, or keeping them in focus. If you have a deep scene and you want everything in the picture to be in focus, aperture is one of the things that will help you toward that. Aperture can also help you get more light in the camera when you're in dim light. And then I learned about shutter speed, and that's what you're going to use to freeze the action in a photo, or to capture, silky waterfalls or trailing taillights and that kind of thing. So shutter speed is fun to play with. And again, controlling shutter speed can help you get more light in the camera when you need it. Now, because I know those three things, any camera I pick up, I just go, where's the ISO button? How do I control the aperture on this camera? And how do I control the shutter speed? And, like with my Olympus, I cannot control the shutter speed, but I can control these two things. So as soon as I learned that, I said, okay, as long as I know how to control these things, then I'm totally fine. So I don't know what you upgraded from. Maybe you upgraded from a camera that had no controls, and now you've got these things you need to learn. But if you've learned about any of these things in the past, they should carry over to your new camera, even if you're changing camera brands. All right, so let's look at your photo, Linda, or photos. So in this picture here, what I thought would make it stronger, I mean, it's definitely a scene, it's the kind of scene that makes me want to walk into it and explore. I wouldn't mind spending the afternoon here, maybe even fishing or something like that. It almost looks like, I just noticed this, but it almost looks like something had made a splash over here. Not totally sure, but it kind of looks like it. What I think might make this photo stronger is different light. So it looks like you were there on an overcast day. If this is a scene that you have access to, maybe this is your property or it's somewhere nearby, if you can go back, I would love to see this in the fall. I would love to see it at different times of the day, like sunset or sunrise, when the light is a little bit more dramatic. And I think that might make the photo stronger. Just a different time of day or not overcast, something that might bring a little more contrast and dimension to the photo. And yeah, I think that might do it. I would love to see it in different seasons, at different times of day. Just, explore the scene in different light, basically. This picture here is great. One of the problems that people have sometimes with photos out in the snow is the snow is so bright, they either get overexposed photos or they end up with a photo, ironically, that's too dark. The snow is so bright that the camera wants to drive down the exposure and make a darker photo, and it ends up looking grayish. But this is nice, lots of contrast. And I think what might make this photo stronger is a slightly different crop. It looks like you might have already cropped it to be kind of, a little bit panoramic feeling. I'm guessing, yeah, it looks like it's a 16:9 crop. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion that you do something a little bit more like this. And the reason is, you know, and again, this is just from my perspective, but it's handy to have somebody outside yourself look at your photo and give you an impression. So my eye is drawn right to, I think I do like an overall scan of the scene, and then my eye very quickly gets drawn to this building over here, and it makes me curious. I see a gate, I want to go through it, I want to see what's in that building, and it's the kind of thing that makes me stop and look at your photo a little bit longer. After I have looked at that, I kind of come back to this side of the photo, and there's not a whole lot here. Like, it looks nice, but there's just not much to explore there. Whereas over here, I'm seeing what looks like maybe a creek, maybe not, but I'm seeing something that makes me think it's a creek. I'm seeing, you know, these trees, I'm seeing these tall trees, I'm seeing a building. There's so much to look at over there. And this stuff over here seems a little bit repetitive. That's why I recommend maybe cropping it, because we still get to see a little bit of it, but now I find myself dwelling on this a little bit more and not getting sidetracked by this part of the photo over here that was just kind of more of the same. It was just kind of repetitive all the way across here. And I don't know that it added to it. It may have distracted me from some of the interesting parts of the photo, some of these lines that that basically lead you in here into this little building, whatever it is. There's a bit of a sense of mystery there, and I want to figure out more about that. It makes me look at your photo more. So keep plugging away at your new camera. Hopefully you've been able to figure it out enough, you know, to give you some satisfying results. And if you do go out and explore this scene more, I would love it if you sent photos and, you know, showed me this basic scene at totally different times of day, totally different seasons. Okay, Samara took classes with me a couple of years ago, and she's got a new little one and has been taking tons of wonderful photos. She sent these two in. So my advice here would be, I mean, first of all, what's strong about these photos? I mean, they're really nice portraits. We've got the face-to-face one. Let's point out some things here. I mean, first of all, we've got nice, you know, kind of depth of field. The background gets out of focus there. The face is nicely in focus, but notice the catch lights here in her eyes. This is awesome in a portrait. Really brings the face to life, really makes the eyes pop. And, you know, the face-to-face angle, the simplicity of the photo, they're great photos. Now, what I would recommend to make them even stronger is a little bit more light on this side of the face. There's two ways you can do it. One would be with a reflector, to have somebody standing, you know, over here basically with a reflector so that the light that is coming in, I'm assuming it's a window. So there's a window somewhere over here, and the light is coming in and it's hitting her face, but it's not quite making it over to this side of the face. What would happen though is the light would come in, it would hit the reflector, it would bounce off the reflector, and it would soften the shadows on this side of the face. It would brighten them up a little bit. Now that might be distracting for a baby, so another way, and a simpler way of doing it, would basically be to take, she's looking right at you, she's looking right at the camera. So if you, instead of standing right here, if you were to take a couple steps over and stand over here, she would then turn her face that way toward you, and the light from the window would now spill across, and because her face is turned, it would start lighting up this side of her face. And there would still be some shadow back in here, and that's totally fine. But just getting the light to spill across her face a little bit more, and you would end up with that classic Rembrandt light where basically one half of the face is lit up really well, like we see here, and then the light spills through. It comes across the top of the nose here, and it would create a pocket of light under her eye like this, and then the rest of her face would end up a little bit shadowy, and it brings really wonderful dimension into a photo. Personally, I'm obsessed with Rembrandt light, and I just love the way it looks in basically any photo. So just keep that in mind, that you kind of want to, one sort of rule of thumb is to always think that the person's nose needs to be pointing toward the light. You know, if the light is coming in from this way, she needs to turn her face just a bit, not like directly at the light, but if she just turned her head, you know, a little bit this way, you would end up with like near perfect lighting. But these are really good photos to begin with. I just think that's what would make it even stronger. I love the expression on her face in this one. Okay, and we're going to come back to Susan. Victor. His photos will magically appear. There we go. Okay, so this first one is cool. He titled it Sea-Doo Wars. And what's neat about this, I mean, first of all, you've got the action, right? You've got this intense wave over here blasting up. It's kind of cool that, I don't know if maybe there's a third Sea-Doo back there, like how that wave is still hanging in the air when they're so far apart from each other. I don't know, maybe there is a third one. But I love the action in the photo. You can totally tell what's going on. There's nothing obstructing the view. And even the fact that this boat is here. Imagine if the boat was like right here and it was disappearing. I think it would almost, that would be the kind of thing that would give us a bit of a distraction. And but the fact that we can see it, it's not obstructed. This is just a really good capture of the moment. And even in the background, I love, it's such a, so we have the drama up here and we have the action up here, but we've also got some drama going on up here. I mean, just because it's such a huge hill, and you can tell it's huge because there are some little buildings in around scattered throughout. And so it helps you to see just how huge that background is. But it's a different kind of drama because here we have action going on. We got Sea-Doos, we got a great big wave, we got a lot of energy, but then up here we have nothing. I mean, we have a hill and it's not doing anything. It's not moving, and yet you can't drive past or through a hill like this and not be in some kind of awe over the size, the beauty, all that kind of stuff. And so we have contrast in the photo between, you know, sort of the human high energy action and drama, and nature's basically, quiet, low energy. I'm just going to sit here and put you in awe kind of drama. So I think that made this photo really neat. What would make it stronger? I don't know. In this case, I just don't know. I wish I had something. What would make it? No, I'll tell you what I tell everybody. Whenever there is something interesting going on in the water, you got a great shot. And what would make it stronger is to get more shots, but from within the water. Actually get, and maybe you don't have to be in the water, but if you can get your camera quite low to the water, not so low that you're going to damage the camera. You have to be careful of waves and stuff. And I have a waterproof camera that I use in situations like this. So, I'm not afraid of ruining my camera. So be careful with your gear. But get right low down to the water and get closer. I think that those things would make this photo stronger. Although I wouldn't want you to have not taken this photo. It's like I want you to have this photo, but then I want you to have other ones that got you closer to the water, closer to the action. And I think you would see, some really great results. And then we have parachuters and snowbirds. So this, just in case you don't know, depending on where you're tuning in from, the snowbirds are a Canadian aerobatic or air show team. And so I'm guessing Victor was at an air show or something like that. This photo I really like for a couple of reasons. So lines are always great to work in a photo when you can. And lines, are not always literal lines like this, where we have lines swooping through the air, but even in the previous photo, we have lines. We have the shoreline here. We have the hill swooping through the photo. We have a line there. We even have, sort of a line from the Sea-Doos. So lines appear in all sorts of different ways in your photos. And generally speaking, we will follow the line. And so sometimes lines create like a path through the photo for the eye to follow. And it gives you the feeling of movement in a photo, even though it's just a still frame and there's no movement, it's frozen. When you follow this, like, you can tell where this paratrooper has been because of the line of smoke in the air. And you can even imagine that, given the curve here, they're going to do another loop, and that somewhere down here they're going to do another loop, maybe. But it gives you the impression of movement and repetition, and we can imagine what's going to happen next. I think, just generally the framing of this photo is great, because it's, the line has worked its way right through the photo till we get to the bottom, and there's really nowhere else to go. What would make this photo stronger would be, Victor, if you were attached to this paratrooper, when you can do the tandem skydiving where you're attached to somebody who knows what they're doing, and you were getting the the photo from their perspective. Now I'm just kind of kidding, because I bet that you probably don't want to go skydiving or attach yourself to a skydiver. But wouldn't that be an interesting perspective? Still playing with the lines. They're going to look different. It's a different perspective. Still playing with the lines and the parachute and everything. I don't know. It's something to consider. If you're a daredevil, go for it and see what you can do with lines and parachutes from a completely different perspective, from the perspective of somebody who's actually attached to the parachute. That would be cool. All right, then we have two shots here of the snowbirds, and again, we have lines. We have lines taking us through the photo here, and we see, we feel the movement. We know where these planes have been, and we kind of have an idea of where they're going to. What would make this stronger? Just something completely different. I mean, the same basic shot, but we always point. I've photographed planes before, and this is a fairly typical shot, and it's good, but we've taken it before, we've seen it before, and so then what would make it stronger? I don't know, if there was some kind of context, like, where are we, for example? Are you in your backyard? Are you at it? Are you on an air base? Are you at an air show? Is this Toronto during the air show that they do most years? Some kind of context. So if you're in Toronto, and again, I have no idea where you would even be in Toronto, but what if, we saw the CN Tower, or we saw some sky rises or something? Is that even possible? If you're at an air show, do we want to see spectators? Maybe we don't, but maybe context. Maybe I know that in this particular scenario, given where they're flying and where you're standing, there's no sun. But what if you could follow them and track them enough that you got a very similar photo with them arcing, something, this graceful kind of view. But what if the sun was right here in the background, blazing bright, and what you ended up with was more of a silhouette? The planes were very dark. And usually we just want this nice, clear, very visible, vivid-looking shot of planes. But what if you went for the opposite? What if you ended up with a silhouette instead? Or what if you were able to get, some of the context some of the people, some of the buildings, something like that. So that's not to say, that this photo isn't good, just what would make it better. Trying something just completely different than what you've got here. And this is, I like the symmetry of this photo, basically, where we've got, if you were to split the photo down the middle, it's similar on either side. I mean, it's not exactly symmetrical, but basically. And then I think maybe the quick thing that could make this photo stronger, perhaps, is just to cut off the sides. And that might be too narrow of a crop, so perhaps something like this might make it stronger. Just losing the sides, because there's not a lot, there's just blue sky there. And this gives the photo kind of a vertical thrust, I think. It looks like they're moving up, so why not crop it vertically? All right, and now Susan, who took my class a couple years ago, she sent a bunch of photos from a recent excursion that she had. So one thing that stands out about these photos as a collection is the different angles. So you've got a higher angle here where you're looking down on a scene. You've got a low angle where you're looking up. Another low angle where you're looking up. This is something like a face-to-face angle where she got like right down on the ground. She got herself covered in mud trying to get this shot. This is sort of, I guess it's a somewhat higher angle looking down. This feels like a very face-to-face angle. So just all the different angles, I think, these photos work well as a collection. Again, if Susan were to print these, suppose she were to pick 4 of these photos, and, I'm just going to do this really quick here, but if she went with high angle, low angle, face-to-face, what else might there be? Maybe this one, just because it's something totally different. And then just in these shots here, she's got high, low, face-to-face, and then another, I don't know, I'm just going to call it a normal angle. It's sort of part higher angle, part face-to-face, depending on what part. If you look at the scenery here, it's kind of face-to-face. If you look at their shadow, you're kind of looking down. It's like a higher angle. So just the variety of angles is really good here. Different lighting. We've got some backlight here that's glowing through the leaves. I wonder if in this photo here, if it might be stronger if this wasn't here. Because we have all these trees that are so similar and so uniform, very, very skinny looking. And then because you're so close to this tree, it looks very large in the photo. So, maybe the photo would be stronger. It's still a great photo, but that might strengthen that photo a little bit. I think what would make this stronger, so you can see that the sky is partly cloudy, and when you look at the scene, it's very flat looking. Actually, you might notice in the distance, I believe the sun is shining on the horizon, but the sun isn't shining in here anywhere. And so maybe waiting until the cloud passed by and the sun came out might add a lot more contrast and pop and dimension into this part of the photo. So I have inadvertently drawn some kind of monster with eyes and with sharp looking teeth and fangs and with this great big upper lip here. I had no intention of doing that. There we go. Just a little fun for you. What would make this stronger photo? A stronger photo would be to get right into the water. Get your big boots or your hip waders on. It's, as long as it's safe, as long as those rapids aren't too dangerous or anything, get yourself right in the water. Maybe there were even some rocks you could have stepped on, and kind of change the angle and let us see. So now you're going to be in the water, and we're basically, we're basically going to be looking, more straight up at that bridge there. I noticed that back there. That could be really cool. Get in the water and get it, kind of a totally different angle on it. Again, good photos to begin with, but it's thinking, okay, what would make this even better? Now, I love this photo here. And again, we've got some symmetry. We've got the dividing line down the center. We've got the shapes that are split in two there. And then, of course, the fog and that sense of mystery, the beautiful fall colors and the sense of mystery. Even notice this line here where, oops, didn't need to do that, where we've got, look at how the light pierces through the fog, and we've got this here, and then it goes down, and then it goes across and through here and along there. We've got this zigzagging line going through there. Also, we've got these, kind of more gentle, flowing lines that go through here. So, we've got this sense of mystery in the fog and a bit of energy in there as well because of those lines that go zigzagging through that our eyes are going to follow. So, really neat shot here. I mean, I would recommend you have to print something from your trip, whether it's a big photo book or some prints for your wall. You definitely have to go through this and pick some photos to print. Again, some symmetry, but then also something breaking into the photo. So we got the dividing line, we've got our symmetry, and we got our sky, and we got our water, but then boom, the head of the canoe. And what's neat about this is we know you're canoeing. You're not just standing on the shore, but you're actually in a canoe. Versus this photo over here, where I'm assuming you just kind of zoomed in or something like that, but we don't see the canoe anymore. So, and both of these photos are great. They're different. So here's the kind of thing where I might have said on this photo, what might make it better is give us some context. Are you in a canoe? Are you on a shore? And then then you take a second shot and it looks like this. So, you did the sort of thing that I always encourage people to do, which is to take more than one photo of the same moment or the same scene if you can. You see here, it's overcast, but we have some light on these trees. And that, when the foreground is lit up and the background falls into darkness, we can still see the background, but it helps something to pop out. Basically, this rock and those trees are all lit up, and it adds a lot more contrast and depth to the photo than that first one where there was no sunlight at all. Sometimes it's just a matter of sticking it out for a few more minutes while the clouds go over, just paying attention to the light. Notice that the scene is very flat looking. I love the color, but it's overcast. There's no shadows. And then in this scene over here, it still has a bit of an overcast feel. I dare say that there's a thin cloud over the sun, but there is a whole lot more contrast in this photo from the light than there is in this one. And again, you can't help it if the sky is just overcast and that's all you've got. You have no choice. Maybe there's not much you can do, but you can, maybe you can stick it out. Maybe if you'd hung out here for a few minutes, the clouds would have passed. But at the very least, you can just compare how these two different images look, something that's a little more flat looking versus something with a little more contrast to it. Really like this photo. I think it's the different colors. I think it's the angle, the lower angle. It looks quite dramatic, and the different colors in the pictures. Here is some context. We see the feet. We know she's relaxed, having a good time. And this one here, I thought, I think it would be stronger if we saw less leg. Now, you've got a long shadow, so it looks like you're like 20 feet tall. And if we were to crop this, see, I find myself, because the shadow is so dark, I find myself drawn to that part of the photo. And I think if you were to crop it, let's say as a square, maybe you're going to post it to Instagram, and you did this, it just cuts out a little bit of the shadow, and it feels to me now like I'm looking out at the scene. My eye is really, it's drawn more to the scene, and then it comes down to you, and I look at you, and then I go, they're looking at the scene, and I look back out at the scene, and then again, I'm inevitably drawn back to you eventually. And notice how the lines work in this photo. So this, I think, is what we're going to look at, right? It's the scene. It's the fall colors. It's the vibrant sky. It's the water. We're going to look there. But notice that eventually, of course, we're going to come and look at you because you're this very dark object. So our eye is going to be drawn there. But then look what happens. We've got you pointing back in this direction toward the scene we were just looking at. We also have this bit of shoreline pointing in that direction. All the lines are leading us back. So we start here, and then we look at you, and then everything is pointing us back here, and then inevitably back to you. That's what I find, anyways, when I look at a photo. When I can say to myself, wait a minute, I just spent 3 seconds looking at this photo. Like 3 seconds on a photo is a long time in an age of just non-stop digital photos constantly hitting us between social media and everything we see as we walk out the door, everything we see on TV. If you can spend 3 seconds on something, there's a reason why. And then when you start to break it down and you start to ask about the lines in the photo, what is drawing my attention? What did I look at first? What did I look at next? What did I go back to? What did I go back to again? All these things can help you figure out what is interesting in a photo. So wonderful job, everybody. I'm really happy that you sent these photos to me. I really like seeing them. I'm honored that you could even be bothered to seek my feedback on your photos. Obviously, there's something I've said or done along the way that has helped you out or made you think that it was worth doing. Don't forget to check out that RAW versus JPEG video, if that means anything to you, if that discussion, if you want to know which of these is RAW, which is JPEG, and why you should shoot RAW or JPEG, I think you'll find that video to be helpful. And of course, as always, go ahead and send me some photos. You can find my contact info. I mean, there's a good chance I've sent you an email, or you can find a link to my email somewhere. And if you would do me a favor, and if this stuff is helpful to you, subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell for notifications, because when you subscribe and when you see the videos as soon as they come out, it lets me know that this is actually even worth doing. When you see the videos, when others see the videos, it just makes the whole effort on your part and my part worthwhile. So thanks for tuning in, and I'd love a comment to just let me know what was helpful to you in this.